Hey friends, it's time for another Playwright tip, and today I want to answer a question from our very own Checkly community Slack. Someone asked if they could use Checkly and/or Playwright to detect broken links on particular pages. And I think this is a beautiful question, so let's get to it and detect all these links going nowhere. Let's go! I already prepared a quick example spec.ts file that includes a single test case that is called no 404s allowed. It navigates to localhost 8080, and to detect all these broken links, we basically want to do two things. First of all, we want to extract all the included links on the page, and for that we will use this helper function, which currently returns nothing. And then once we have all these link URLs, then we have to check if all of them return a proper 200 status code. But what links are we dealing with? Let's have a look at localhost 8080. To make the development of our test case easier, I created this example page that includes a few link scenarios. So first of all, we have here an empty link. And when you click it, basically nothing happens. It's just reloading the page. And we want to detect these. Then we have a URL that goes to doesnotexist.raccoon, and obviously this is not a real domain, so this is something that we want to detect. Then we have a mail to link that will open up the mail program, and Playwright will not handle this one properly, so we need to ignore these links. Then we have a 404 that we want to detect, and here we have a good link. So our Playwright test case ideally will tell us when we have empty links, when there are links to domains that do not exist, and when there are links to pages that return a 404. Let's get all this into our test case. We can start by getting into our get all links from page function, and we can define a locator with the page get by role function, and we're looking for links here. And you might not think that you could already start iterating over all these links, but this is not how Playwright locators work. Playwright locators are usually lazy, and when you define a locator, it's not reaching into the DOM yet. It only accesses the HTML elements or the DOM elements when you call it with an assertion or an action. And this exact behavior is the reason why you can rely on auto-waiting all the time when using Playwright. So when you're awaiting all your locators in Playwright, go ahead right now and clean that up. When you call a locator, it's really just defining a blueprint for the elements that you want to match. So how can we reach into the DOM to get all these links right now? When you check the Playwright docs, you will discover the all method, and this one will reach into the DOM right away, and it will not auto-wait for any elements matching your locator. So we can now go ahead and we can define all links. And what we want to do here is we want to await links.all. So by calling this, we are really accessing the DOM and we're getting all the links on the page. And with these, we can now start extracting all the hrefs that are included in these links elements by iterating over this array, all links. And then we're reaching into the DOM to ask for the attribute href. If we now return all hrefs, we can go ahead and run npx Playwright Test to already see all our link URLs. But we're not done yet. We still include this mail to link here, and I also would like to implement some logic to avoid duplicate URLs so that we're not making unnecessary requests. So let's add another variable that we call all valid hrefs. And here we will iterate once more over all our extracted href strings. By using array.reduce, we can define an initial value. In this case, we're going with a set of strings, and then we're iterating over all the hrefs. And then we can go ahead and we can say, if there's a link, we want to add it to our existing set, and then we will return our set again, so that it will pop out here as links in the next iteration. And because we're using a JavaScript set here, we can automatically filter out duplicates because values in a set have to be unique. So that's quite nice. When we now look at the values on the page, we see that we're also dealing with this empty string value. And by applying this condition here, we're not adding it to our valid hrefs. And I think this is great. But I still would like to get notified by Playwright when there's an invalid link href. And to do that, let's bring in our first assertion, and we're gonna call expect link. And let's bring in expect because it's not imported in the test case here, to be truthy. Here we go. So let's see if this works and go back to the terminal and call npx Playwright Test again. And here we have now a failed instruction telling us that this empty string is not a truthy value. But this entire approach has one problem now. Note that our console log isn't printed out anymore. When Playwright runs this assertion here, expect to be truthy, it will discover this empty string value. And the way expect works is that it then will throw an exception and it will prevent all the rest of our test case from running. To change this behavior, we can transform this assertion into a soft assertion. When Playwright discovers a soft assertion in your test cases, it will collect all these errors and it will still fail your test case, but the entire test will continue running. So when we now return our new set from our getAllLinksFromPage function, and we run this test case again, we should have a failing test case, but still make it to this console log, which comes later in the test case. Let's add two more things to our getAllLinksFromPage function. So first of all, I would like to filter out this mail2 link. So we can go into our condition and we can say if there's a link and if it doesn't start with mail2, we want to add it to our set. So let's rerun this. So this looks great. And now as the last step, I want to change how we add these strings to our set. So let's add this one. And this one looks rather cryptic. So let me explain to you what new URL does in this case. When we extract all these href values from really any website, it could be that we're discovering relative URLs, like this /raccoon over there. By using the URL constructor that is built into JavaScript, we can normalize these URLs to always include a proper protocol and make them absolute. We will need that in just a minute to make some good old HTTP calls. But now I think we're done here and we can move on. So getAllLinksFromPage is done. Now we can go ahead and start iterating over all these link URLs. So let's see what Copilot does. So I would like to change this to a URL first of all. So here we're iterating over the URLs in our set, and Playwright tells us that we should use page goto. But I think this is quite overkill because I'm only interested in HTTP status codes. So we can change page goto to request get over here. Now we use URL. And what we're now doing instead is we're making HTTP calls from the context of our currently loaded page. And then we're checking if we get a proper green status code with OK. And let's change this to be a soft assertion because we're iterating over all our URLs and we don't want the test to stop. And with that, let's see what happens. When we go to the terminal and we run npx Playwright Test another time, we see that page request get is throwing an exception because we're trying to access a domain that it is not found. So let's quickly add a try catch in here, move these two things in here. And if there's an error coming from page request get, we will use the same assertion, but we will pass in null, which is definitely not truthy. And now, when we run our test case again, here we go, we should see that we have a failing test case and there are 1, 2, 3 failed assertions, but they're not very descriptive right now. So let's change these and also add a custom assertion error message. So we can always go in here, pass in a second argument and say the URL is not okay. Let's add this string also to our other assertions. So we add it here. And then we can also go up and we can define that when there is no valid link, we will say that link is no valid href. So let's run this again. Let's see npx Playwright Test. And here we go. Let's see, here we have check HQ does not exist is not okay. Does not exist is not okay. And here we have empty string is no valid href. I think this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and run this against a real URL. So we changed localhost 8080 to checkhq.com/docs because I know our documentation includes a ton of links. So let's run this one again. Here we go. Here we have already a few links and we're making all the requests now. And ba-da-da-dum. So we have a passing test case. We checked all these URLs here. And even though it looks like there are a lot, I don't think these are all the links on the page. So there's one final tweak we have to make. Remember when we selected and matched all the links by using getByRole? GetByRole is a user-facing Playwright selector and will only select links that are visible to a user, to a human. So if we now change this to page locator and we use the anchor element here, we should really test all the links that are included in the HTML. Are you ready for the final run? So let's go to the terminal a final time. Let's run npx Playwright Test and let's see. We're now dealing with 165 links detected in the HTML. And let's see if they're all valid. Nice. So So I don't have anything to do and I don't have to fix our docs now. And you can now take this script and put it into your Playwright Test suite and run it via CI/CD. But when your sites are powered with the content management system, you probably want to check for broken links on a schedule. And this is where you could use Checkly. Here we are in the Checkly web app, and here you see our test case already, no 404's spec.ts. And this Playwright test case is running on a schedule from different locations all around the world and is now checking that our docs are not including broken links. And if they do, Checkly will send me an alert about it. So whenever you're running Playwright in CI/CD, you might want to question if it makes sense to run Playwright on a schedule and test production with synthetic monitoring. Because this is the only way to know that your production environment, that your prod websites are up and running, and that your users are not facing any issues. And with that, we made it. If you want to copy and paste the source code that I just showed you, head over to GitHub. We have a whole repository that includes all the source code of all the videos here on the YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. I read all the comments and I love publishing follow-up videos here on Checkly's YouTube channel. And now we're really done, and I will see you in the next Playwright Tips video.